Hello everyone, we're Team 1. Today we're going to present the topic of music and brain. Our presenters are Rebecca, Jenny, Christina, and Blas. Next page, please. Here is our work distribution. I'll talk about the opening, which is music can affect our taste. Then Jenny will talk about baby's language acquisition and music. And Christina will talk about baby's language acquisition and music too. Last but not least, Blas will talk about music and aphasia. Next page, please. So as an opening, I would like to share a funny fact. A professor called Charles Spence has done an experiment in 2012. He asked the subject to eat chocolates while listening different kinds of music. Believe it or not, the results have shown that when the subjects listen to high-pitched music, chocolates taste sweeter, while listening to low-pitched music, it tastes bitter. Next page, please. And the reason behind this phenomenon is called synesthetic. It means when the sensory gets stimulus, it triggers another sensory's perception. Next page, please.
在牛津大学有一个叫做 Charles Spence 的教授，他
And now let's watch a short video clip to discover how this experiment undergo.
他说，我们吃的东西跟我们听音乐啊，会有互相的连结的关系。当我们今天吃东西的时候，听到的音频是比较高的或比较低的，会让你的味觉产生改变。办公室的同仁们听到这消息的时候，都觉得说，这真的是有可能的吗？所以我们现在就想要说，来试试看，到底它是不是有可能的。就先吃。
有点酸，有点苦。
好，那你继续听。
它的苦味不见了，
所以变好吃了。
对啊，为什么？
然后请拿一块巧克力。你也可以讲讲你现在。
好苦哦！
你先放，先放。你觉得有改变吗？
我觉得变比较甜哎，高的。
所以你觉得刚刚一开始都是非常苦
啊？Okay, so this is an intriguing experiment. Next time you can discover how you feel at your home. Okay, next let's welcome Jenny.
Hi, my name is Jenny, and today I'm going to talk about language acquisition, relationship between baby's language acquisition and music. Next. And first, I would like to talk about our motivation to choose the topic. Have you ever heard of the two songs, Row, Row, Row Your Boat and Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? And now we can reminisce our childhood a little bit.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how
So when I was little, my parents sent me to an English cram school, and I learned these two songs. Even though at that time I knew nothing about the lyrics, I could still sing the song very well. So now I'm wondering, does music help us pick up the intonations, the syntax, and the rhyme? If yes, how and when? Does our learning process begin in the womb? Next. So before I talk about that, I would like to briefly talk about the history. So back in the 19th century, people had already debating whether babies can hear sounds in the womb. At that time, there was a famous psychologist, W.T. Prayer. He claimed that babies cannot hear sounds before they are born since the newborn's ear canal was blocked by colloidal liquid and amniotic fluid. Next. But then researchers in physical acoustics have proved that sound waves can reach the womb. So basically, babies can hear sound in the womb. And from then, the learning process has started. Next. So here are some fun facts that I would like to share with you. The first one is language learning begins in the womb. So now we know that sounds can be clearly heard in the womb. Babies begin to hear sounds outside the womb at about 27 weeks, and they're able to recognize and respond to that. Also, people found that babies have a preference for their songs their mothers sang before they were born. This is also the theoretical basis of prenatal education. And apart from that, an interesting study also showed that babies prefer their mother's voice than father's. So the researchers did an experiment on 11 babies and observed their sucking rate. So when babies suck at a high speed, they will hear their mother's voice. And if they suck at a low speed, then they will hear their father's voice. To make sure that it's not because little babies like high speed sucking. The opposite experiment was that babies could only hear their mother's voice when they suck at a low speed. And the result turns out that babies immediately lower down their sucking rate. So I think, yeah, this is pretty cool. So next. Also, music plays a key role in helping children acquiring language. Why? Because as a child, we can imitate the rhythm and musical structure and say words. So music helps us learn the words and expressions more effectively. For instance, the repetitive patterns within the song can help us memorize the words. And even if we are unfamiliar with most of the words, mimicking the words in a song can help us practice producing sounds in the language. Next. And the third one is music enhances brain development. The author of Building Baby's Brain, The Role of Music, Dr. Diane Bells, she says that the synapses used for classical music are similar to those used for spatial and temporal reasoning. So listening to classical music can trigger those synapses. To prove that the idea was right, people also conducted experiments on children. And the result shows that children who took piano lessons for 6 months improved their ability to work puzzles and solve their spatial tasks by as much as 30%. And this phenomenon not only happens on children, but also adults. So after listening to classical music, college students, they can resolve puzzles more quickly. And next. So here is the music recommendation. The first choice is classical music, such as the works from Bach, Beethoven, or Mozart. As I have mentioned, classical music has a more complex musical structure, so listening to classical music can have a different effect on the brain than listening to other types of music. However, this doesn't mean that other types of music are not good. In fact, listening to any kind of music can help to enhance child's brain development. Next. And last but not least, what else can you do aside from just playing the music to the child? According to Dr. Diane Bells, again, she recommends adults to sing to their babies or sing with their babies. Some people might think that they cannot sing well, but actually it doesn't matter how well you sing. The main point is to stimulate your babies and help them begin to learn language. Additionally, it's better to start music lessons as early as possible. If you want your child to learn an instrument, you don't need to wait until they are at the age of 7 or 8. You can start it when they are at the age of 4 or 5, because study shows that most 4 or 5 years old children, they enjoy making music and they are capable of learning the basics of some instruments. Next, Christina would talk about some of the findings and research.
Okay, this is Christina. And thank you, Jenny. After the thorough information that Jenny just gave us, let's dive right into our science supports. Today, we provide evidence to support our ideas, and I'm gonna walk you through them. Our first finding is a research published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And the lead author of this research is Dr. Christina Zhao. She's a research assistant professor at the Department of Speech and Hearing Sciences at the University of Washington. She's the director of the Lab for Early Auditory Perception, which is housed within the Institute for Learning and Brain Sciences. She grew up as a bilingual speaker and she has learned to play piano since she was only 4 years old. Hence, she made a lot of musician friends, and their success triggered her to study more about how our brains process sounds in her college time. And she kept on working on this field until now. In April 2016, she published the research, Music May Help Babies Learn Language Skills. And the research studied 39-month-old infants, and 20 of the babies listened to recorded children's music that included wild rhythms and tunes like Take Me Out to the Ball Game while playing toys. And their parents would hit the beats of the drum for them. The other 19 babies also play with toys and blocks, but without music. The experiment lasted for about a month, and let's see what's going on. Okay, at the end of the month, when the babies underwent brain scan to measure their brain activities via MEG, the researchers found out that babies in the music group show stronger brain responses in the auditory and the prefrontal cortex, which are involved in controlling attention and detecting patterns. The co-author of the research, Dr. Patricia Kuhl, said these skills are important cognitive skills, and improving these abilities early may have long-lasting effects on learning. Through this study, we can have better knowledge of how to treat our future babies. And let's jump into our following findings. Just now, Jenny mentioned that language learning begins in the womb, right? A baby's sensitivity toward melody is even much earlier than we thought. We thus found a parenting science article that may help prove this point. In the article, the author, Dr. Grandour, mentions that even before birth, babies have begun paying attention to sound, and newborns can recognize familiar voices and tunes. How do we know? By ultrasound. There's a study conducted by Voigtland's team and was published in 2013. Researchers have used ultrasound to see how unborn babies respond when they hear sounds. For instance, when babies hear their parents talking, they tend to be quiet for a while, and they slow down their body movements for several seconds. So, do babies learn when they listen? And that's what we're curious about. We can find the answer in the next research operated by Partners team in 2014. During the experiment, researchers asked pregnant women to listen to recordings of the song Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. The women were asked to play the music in a low voice. The volume was like someone singing about 3 feet away from their bellies. And the babies heard the melody about 170 times on average before birth. And after childbirth, the researchers played the same song, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, to them once more and measured electrical activity in their brains. In addition, the researchers tested a control group on newborns who hadn't been subjected to prenatal music sessions. The result is that the Twinkle Twinkle babies showed neural signs of being familiar with the music. In contrast, the control group did not. So the conclusion is that newborns can really recognize melodies. Does that sound fantastic? Okay, and now we all know that the idea that music is important has affected not only in Western families, but also to Taiwanese families. Let's watch a short video together.
桂格浓汤燕麦，更多口味新上市，任何时刻想吃就吃。
入小宝宝的语言学习，这是美国一项最新的研究发现，找来了9个月大的小宝宝测试，让他们听音乐，随着旋律敲敲打打。1个月之后，透过脑部扫描发现，小朋友大脑里头掌管认知还有语言的区块表现都比较活跃。
跟着老师唱儿歌，敲打乐器帮忙伴奏。美国研究发现，这么做可能对小孩的语言学习大有帮助。美国华盛顿大学研究找来9个月大的婴儿，让他们听华尔兹，随着旋律敲敲打打。1个月后，发现这些孩子对声音和语言的反应，都比没接触音乐的孩子来得更敏锐。
音乐它可以帮助小孩学到规则。 那可能也可以帮助那个小孩学到语言的规律。
透过脑部扫描，可以看到接触音乐的小朋友大脑里掌管认知的颞叶和负责语言的额叶都表现得比较活跃，有助于语言学习。
那个曲的形式不对，你比如跳痛，如果已经知道这个组合规则的话，他发现跳痛是不对，那他可能就可以用到说话的时候，比如我们改变任何一个 音节的结构，他就会发现
音乐的旋律和节奏让婴儿对语言更敏锐。专家建议家长不妨让宝宝多接触音乐，不止陶冶性情，对语言学习也能产生正面效益。届时什么林一心台报道。
Okay. And now let me do a short summary. First is that more and more studies indicate that babies who engage in musical play may have an easier time picking up language skills. For example, the repetitive patterns of songs help the children memorize words. Therefore, it is vital to provide some classical music or soft music, etc. for the babies. And this is pretty good for them. Second is that babies are not just sleeping all the time. They listen a lot before they even give birth. So do not say any bad words in front of yours or other people's babies. They can hear you. Okay, and let's welcome our next presenter.
Okay, hello everyone, I'm Bless. From the last presentation, the last section, we talked about how music affects language processing. Now we look on the next section, that is language production and how music can affect language production. Especially in this point, we're going to focus on that with the case of music and aphasia patients. Next. But first of all, why did we choose that subtopic? Why music and aphasia in specific? You can see it on The next slide.
Stephen's now been diagnosed with aphasia.
So we choose this topic because if you guys remember from our lecture with the professor, that is language disorders, one of them is aphasia. And we saw this video that inspired us and motivates us on why we want to take on this topic, that is music and aphasia patients. Let's watch this video together again.
I see skies are blue.
You're hearing the perfectly pitched and precise singing voice of Stephen Gibbs.
Good morning, Ashley and Aria.
A man who communicates in song because words don't flow.
How can I help? Oh, can New Zealand classical music? I want to a bouquet.
This is Stephen's verbal reality.
And you, the harmonica. Yeah, the words are here, and I can't express them.
Stephen's now been diagnosed with aphasia, a blip in the part of the brain that controls spoken language.
It interrupts the pathways between being able to have the idea that you have in your head to getting the word out. Very frustrating.
Spaghetti.
Okay, slow it down.
8 months after the stroke, he's making some good progress with his spoken word.
Good morning, Ashley and Aria.
But get Stephen singing.
Good afternoon, Ashley and Aria.
And the hesitation, the confusion is gone.
Right. So we can see that this patient, he had stroke before, and after his stroke, he got aphasia. So aphasia was one of his post effects from stroke. Well, we can see that in the previous video, the left one, that when he talked to people, like when he talked to the cashier, he was trying to buy flowers for his wife, he had struggle. He struggled with his words. He said that he wanted to buy a bouquet, and he also said harmonica, but he said harmonica. So he still had trouble with speaking, with articulating his words, but with singing, he didn't have any problems with that. We heard that he sang the first few songs very well, and he also tried singing. He said good afternoon, but with some notes, with his singing voice to his daughters, and he spoke that very well too. He said, good afternoon, Ashley and Aria. So he could actually speak better while he was singing. So this is what motivates us to choose this topic, that is music and aphasia patients. Okay, next. But first of all, let's also look on this case. So what is actually stroke, and what does that have to do with aphasia? So stroke happens when there's a weakened blood vessel and there happens a rupture. And this causes no blood to flow into a part of the brain. And also the oxygens and the nutrients needed to that part of the brain, they won't get it. So when there's no oxygen and nutrients coming to that part of the brain, of course, that part of the brain doesn't function as it is supposed to, which is why stroke has aphasia from one of its most leading causes. And aphasia is, it says here that language function disorder is the main symptoms for stroke-related impairments. So most of the post effects of stroke, that is the stroke-related impairments, usually begin with aphasia. We can see it in the next slide. That about 21 to 38% of patients that had stroke, 1/3 of it, it says, 1/3 of it got aphasia. So what is aphasia? Also from the aphasia part that we studied with the professor, it is a kind of acquired loss or impairment of the ability to communicate by language following brain damage and is usually on the left hemisphere. It's like here in the image, you can see that she wanted to say, I want grapes, but instead of saying that, she said, your grapes. So they have trouble with communicating. That is usually on aphasia. Next. So aside from the video that we just watched just now, there's actually more stories that gave that same case. And here there's Mindy Rowland from National Aphasia Association. This website she told us that the San Francisco Chronicle, there was an article writing about Mindy Rowland, and she found her way back to talking back from aphasia, that is through music. So the story was her husband, he left the music on at the house. And when he came back, he found that Mindy was singing along to Tiny Dancer by Elton John. And at that time, she was in speech therapy and normal speech therapy, not music speech therapy. We're going to see that later. But this speech therapy, well, it doesn't really work that much. But after he sang this, after he put on the song and she sang, so somehow she still couldn't talk well, but she could sing way better. Next. We can also see from Mindy Rowland that this article stated there are music therapies right now being used to treat people with traumatic brain injuries like stroke. And for most people, it works, right? It happens for people with strokes. It helps people with strokes, that is also with its aphasia problems. It says that once Mindy started singing, she spoke 10 times better than before she started singing. So why this happens, there are still many theories. And one theory states that, maybe because language processing and language production is usually with the left brain hemisphere, but with singing, it's from the right brain hemisphere. So this creates, because we use both parts of the brains and it helps stimulates the brains. And there are many theories about this. And we're going to look on some more cases and more researches about this that is going to be presented by Rebecca.
Next page, please. Yeah, thanks, Blas, for like share the insights on the topic of music and aphasia, also as well as talking about stroke and aphasia. Now we have a key question. Can we use music to treat patients with aphasia? If yes, what kind of music and how? Next page, please. So we found Blas has found a research that elaborates on this topic and which offers the answer to this question. This research is done by Chinese researchers in 2021. And what is the research? What does the research discover? It sheds light on melodic intonation therapy, MIT. It has positively impacts the speech function of patients suffering from aphasia and strokes. Fixed pitch melodies and phrases formulated in MIT provide the key to the target language to open the language pathway. Next page, please. So I would briefly introduce how it undergoes. So the researchers recruit 40 participants, which were randomly assigned to two groups. The first group is the intervention group, which received MIT therapy. And the second group is the control group, which received speech therapy. Each of the group has 20 people. About the research time, The intervention group received MIT 30 minutes per day, 5 times a week for 8 weeks, while the control group received speech therapy in the same period of time. Yes, next page, please. So here is the table of participants' characteristics. For me, it is more noteworthy to look at the classification of the participants. From this chart, we can see that there are STOPE classification, also non-fluent aphasia classification, which includes the aphasia we are familiar with: global aphasia, broadcast aphasia, and transcortical missing. Next page, please. So after this experiment has done, we are curious about the results, whether the intervention group will have better language performance than the control group. And the results can be seen from the above 3 dimensions. First is the spontaneous speech. The intervention group has a higher performance than the control group. However, in the fluency part, intervention group has no significant differences with the control group. Lastly, in the when it comes to naming, the intervention group did perform better than the control group in the naming part. Yes, next page, please. So the results prove that compared with speech therapy, MIT is more effective and valuable for the recovery of speech function in patients with non-fluent aphasia. Next, please. So it concludes that the MIT performed by music therapies has a more obvious effects on improving the language function of patients with non-fluency aphasia. Therefore, it is suggested that clinicians can work together with the professional music therapists and have further and deeper cooperation to make the treatment effort even more remarkable. Next page, please. So here are our references, and thanks for your attention. Welcome to any question. Thank you very much. That's the end of our presentation. Thank you.